Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting of the City Council of the Universal City of Texas. It is Tuesday, April 19th, 2022. I will call the meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. and call for a quorum check, please.
Mayor Williams.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Neville.
Here.
Councilmember Goolsby.
Here.
Councilmember Maxwell.
Here.
Councilmember Najarian.
Here.
Councilmember Shelby.
Here.
Councilmember Volle.
Here.
Quorum is present. We shall receive the invocation this evening. Will be given by city staff, and Kristen is going to do that for us, and I'll lead us in the pledges afterwards, so whatever we please.
Heavenly Father, we come to you today knowing that you are in control of all things. You tell us, Lord, that if we wait upon you, you will renew our strength, that we will soar on the wings like eagles, that we shall run and not be weary, we shall walk and not faint. Help us continue to hold fast to that promise. Father, we pray that you heal the minds and bodies of the sick and the spirits of the broken, that you protect the lives of our first responders. We pray for our leaders, government officials, and those in authority, that they are blessed with the knowledge and desire to make decisions that are not only in the best interest of the people they serve, but also pleasing to you. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
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 I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Again, it's a great pleasure to see so many people in the audience tonight. Thank you very much for attending. We appreciate your participation. Okay, this evening the first item we have is our consent agenda, and that is it's tab number 8, and all matters listed under, as you could read, are considered to be routine by council and being enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items. However, if someone wants to pull one of those items and discuss it separately, we certainly can. Those items this evening are the minutes and the ordinance 568F2022, which is readopting curfew for minors 17 years of age, to prohibit being in a public place between the hours of midnight and 6 a.m. So,
Move for approval.
okay, motion made by Councilmember Shelby.
Second.
Second by Councilmember Volle. Any discussion further? Okay, call for the vote, please.
Councilmember Shelby.
Aye.
Councilmember Volle.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Neville.
Aye.
Councilmember Goolsby.
Aye.
Councilmember Maxwell.
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian.
Aye.
That motion passes. And I think you recall, those you were here at the last meeting, there was input from the citizens, and we listened and did some changes on that. We really do appreciate your input. Thank you very much. Okay, so the next item is our citizens to be heard. We have 4 citizens that signed up this evening. Again, it's time to address the council on issues or concerns. It's informative. We're not going to have any discussion specifically, but we do welcome your input. And the first person that signed up this evening is Ms. Kim Eigelhart. Ma'am? Name and address for the record, please.
Kim Eigelhart, 736 Garden Meadow Drive. Recently, I provided you with information about the appointment of members to the boards and commissions. Over the past 6 years, council has repeatedly approved staff's recommendations without any discussion. Yet, our city charter requires these bodies to be both determined and appointed by you, our council, and does not include a role for staff in this process whatsoever. I'm here today to respectfully request this council to remove an individual from the Planning and Zoning Commission due to irregularities and the method of their appointment. I do not know this individual, who I shall refer to as applicant A, or anything about them. this is strictly a procedural matter. When applicant A applied, they failed to complete the section of the application asking about their qualifications. Yet, just 5 hours after the Developmental Services Director, Michael Quesada, received applicant A's application, he advised them they were selected for the position. 14 days later, this council gave perfunctory approval to Quesada's decision. Since Quesada, and not this council, appointed applicant A to the commission in violation of the city charter, I request that they be removed. Applicants B, C, D, and E all applied prior to or at the same time as applicant A and completed the application in its entirety, yet were not selected. Applicant A's ability to be appointed over them raises questions about the transparency of the selection process, and the fact that Quesada was confident council would rubber stamp his decision is concerning. Not only does applicant A need to be removed, but staff needs to be severed from the selection process. This body is more than capable of reviewing applications and making appointments. The board and commission are accountable not to staff, but to this council and ultimately to we the people. Please abide by the charter and make the board and commission independent of the staff whose actions they sit in judgment of. Restore our faith in you and the process by conducting an investigation pursuant to section 3.08 of the city charter and taking appropriate action against Mr. Quesada for his overstepping his authority. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Aguilar. Appreciate your comments. Next individual assignment this evening, Mr. Phil Vaughn.
Thank you, Mayor. Phil Vaughn, 20-1, University City Boulevard. I'm here for 2 agenda items tonight. The first one's the bond election. I know you're just discussing it, but I think it's a little bit premature. There's an election next month. The council might change a little bit or it might change a lot, but that new council is going to have to deal with those bonds, so I would say that this should be punted and let them decide on it. Still plenty of time before November. There's also some significant financial transactions that are coming, particularly the bids that we're receiving on the land in North Lake. That could be another $5 million coming into the city, which could change the dynamic of what kind of bonds we might need for the streets. I'd also like to ask that you consider giving us a list of the streets that you want to approve. The last bond we did in 2010 was just kind of a blanket amount, and we're just now finishing it 12 years later. I don't think we really had any idea what we were approving in 2010, so I'd like to have that be a little bit more informative for the city to know what we're approving if you're going to ask us to approve bonds. And lastly, I would like the city to consider all of the alternative means to pay for those streets. I think everything should be on the table rather than just defaulting to taxpayers need to pay for it. I think a sales tax election should be one of those options on the table. Now, talking about the fire codes tonight, I sent you all my list of recommendations on those, which has what the ICC has, what the city is proposing, and what my concerns are about those. I know that you all trust the fire department and trust the fire marshal, but you still don't want to give them blanket powers that can be abused. You might get a new fire marshal that might abuse those, and some of those of particular concern are like 110.1.1 and 1.2, where the fire marshal talks about the fire marshal having the ability to shut off people's utilities. That's in the ICC, that's common, but the ICC has the language that he can do it to eliminate an immediate threat, and the city wants to change it to, quote, any fire hazard. So presumably someone could come to my house and say, I've got leaves in my gutters, and that's a fire hazard, so we're gonna shut off your utilities and kick you out until you fix it. You have other things like bans on any acceptable alternatives to fire sprinklers, where there are acceptable alternatives in the ICC which have to be approved by the fire marshal. So there's no need to just completely ban those options. We should leave those on the table. We shouldn't be reducing the requirements for fire sprinklers on commercial buildings from 12,000 square feet down to 2,000 square feet. That's pretty onerous. And there's things like requiring fire sprinklers in all corridors and balconies, no ifs, ands, or buts. Whether these are ingress, egress points, whether there's people on those balconies or corridors, there's no consideration for that. You just have to have them. They could be completely open air corridors, and now you gotta have fire sprinklers in there. There's no point, that's a freeze hazard. There should be some life safety considerations in terms of what is really life safety and what's not. So putting a complete ban with no exceptions or caveats is ridiculous. That's 903.3.1.2.2. That's a lot of them. But I have that whole list in front of you, so I hope you will consider those. Thank you.
There's a discussion on this evening's discussion only. There's no action that's going to be taken this evening, and so I appreciate your comments, Mr. Vaughn. Thank you very much. Next individual is Colonel Jim Vinci.
Yeah, I am still wearing the Ukrainian colors in support, but I have changed my clothes since 2 weeks ago. Jim Vinci, James Vinci, 8503 South Lane, Universal City. Council members and mayor, I'm here because I just don't want to give up on this. I'm trying to convince all of you, although I think many of you realize this, please, I don't think you're listening to us, the community. Yet I hear that that's what you want. You want to hear us from the citizens, and yet when we send emails to you, Mr. Mateko and I, we've even offered our services for free as consultants to help you do some things. I don't always hear back from all of you. Some of you I hear back all the time. Some of you I hear back some of the time. Councilmember Volle, I've never heard back from you once. And on the 29th of March, you are the ones who stressed. Please tell us what you want, what are your needs, and we will get back to you. I've never heard from you once. I hate to call you out on that, but the fact is the fact. So you're not responding. So you say that you want us to speak to you, you want to hear what we have to say, but you're not listening to us. Another council member, I don't want to repeat the name because the council member is just, we're communicating. But the response that I got was, when I asked about getting the citizens involved, the response I got back from an individual I really respect. I'm not sure what input citizens could provide concerning codes. They would be more concerned with their wants versus required or needed safety requirements. As a retired colonel, you know the experts should set the baseline. Well, I gotta tell you, ladies and gentlemen, well, I didn't want to say anything.
No, I think
But I gotta tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I've been in combat. I'm in 06. I've been shot at. I've had people shot at. I've had people that are no longer here. But I gotta tell you, the reason why I'm here is because I listen to my folks. I listen to what they have to say. And because of them, I'm probably the only reason why I'm here today to be able to speak to you. So I ask you once again, don't just say you want to listen to the citizens. You want to hear their input. There's a lot of input that we can provide you. Maybe small things. I think a good example is the time that Mr. Vaughn has put in to give you some of the concerns and some of the recommendations that he may have. You may accept them or not. But some things are really, they're very small points, but they're important points. And they're easy to accept. It just makes common sense. But what I sense, not from all of you, but what I sense is you say you want to hear from us. But when we do try to contact you, we do try to share with you, we don't hear back from you. Look, you know what, I'm not here very often. I'm here when I'm doing some consulting work for you guys. And we've offered to do free work from you again. And Mr. Mateko and I still offer that, objectively, to offer our free services, if that's what it takes. So, but I ask you again, please, don't just say that you want to listen to the citizens, but actually listen to us. Have a dialogue with us, one way or the other, whether through advisory groups. There are ways of not getting around, so you don't have to do it. You don't absolutely go counter to the Open Meetings Act. Well, folks, thank you very much. You all have a great evening. Thank you for what all you do. I appreciate it. It's a great city to live in, but I'm here to make sure that we continue to be a great city. Thank you.
Okay, the last individual signed this evening is Mr. Bernard Rubal. Mr. Rubal.
Mr. Mayor, council members, very powerful discussions already, and I'm not going to belabor a lot of the points that have been part of those discussions. However, I would like to bring to council that for several meetings now, there has been a request for consideration of council for greater transparency and accountability to include those minimal guidelines recommended by the State Controller's Office. Nothing has happened in that regard. We will hear tonight about some positive changes that occurred in golf course budgeting. However, what I want to hear from council after 22 years of failed golf course operations, of horrendous tax burdens on the residents, what I'd like to hear is the sound business plan for golf course operation that guarantees profitability rather than long-term debt or the future need for tax revenue. 22 years, not this council, but council has had this to consider, and it's time, I think, that the council responds. I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Okay, did anyone else want to address the council that didn't have a chance to sign up on the sheet this evening? I'd be more than happy to let you speak to council. Okay, as you said, then we'll close this particular part. We'll move on then to our business for this evening. First item is tab number B. Excuse me, to discuss and consider ordinance 665. It's an ordinance authorizing the issuance, sale, and delivery of City of University City, Texas General Obligation Bond Series 2022, making provisions for the payments of interest thereon and the principal thereof, approving and authorizing the execution of all instruments and procedures related thereto, including a paying agent, registrar agreement, and an official statement, and declaring an effective date. This is my first reading.
Thank you, Mayor. As you know, we had this discussion some time back, and we have gone through the bond process. So we have Noel Valdez and Rose here with McCall Parkhurst and Horton. And of course, we always have Victor, who's our financial advisor with Specialized Public Finance, and they'll go ahead and give the presentation on this,
Okay.
and then lead you through the approval of the ordinance.
Okay.
Thank you. Right here.
Honorable Mayor, members of council, Ms. Turner, thank you for having me here this evening. For the record, my name is Victor Quiroga with Specialized Public Finance, and we have the honor of representing the city as your financial advisor. As Ms. Turner indicated, also with us is Noel Valdez and Rose Kniske. She's there with McCall, Parkhurst, and Horton, and they're prepared the agenda language and also the ordinance and resolution that you're considering this evening. Tonight seems like a theme on bonds, and so this is the first of 3 items that we're invited to discuss with you on. Here we're presenting to you the interest rate results from the bids that we held and opened this morning for the issuance of the last part of the street bonds that were approved back in 2010. So the first page after the cover sheet is the rating results, and they were affirmed by Standard & Poor's. They affirmed the city's already strong credit rating. They affirmed the AA+, which is just 1 notch below the AAA, which is the safest, best credit rating that a city could attain. Some of the factors for their decision on affirming the city's strong credit rating was the expanding economy, located in broad and diverse MSA, good financial policies and practices, strong institutional framework, growing reserves and very strong financial performance, and an adequate debt profile. So again, at least from an independent party's view, the city is doing great in terms of its financial position and credit worthiness. If you go to the next slide, this is the tabulation of bids. But when you saw me last time, you allowed us to move forward with the bond offering documents required to conduct a competitive sale for $3,145,000. Today was the bid opening at 10 a.m. and that's done over an electronic internet service that the industry uses. We received 7 bids from investment banks throughout the country today. The winning bid came in from FHN Financial Capital Markets. They're based out of Memphis, Tennessee. Their winning interest rate was at 3.015%. What I'd like to point out here is you can see in the first 3 bids, they were very tight and very close. They're only about 2 basis points or 0.02% away from each other. That's an indication that the city received market rate. But the other thing I'd like to point out too is if you can see the 7th place bid, They were at a 3.62, which is pretty far distance from the 3.01. And in our world, that's a pretty far distance from the winning bid. So that's just an indication that right now there's still some volatility in the bond market, and we're seeing that through a rising interest rate that we're in. One of the important things in the last bullet point on this slide here, the importance of credit rating was really made an example today. At the same time, 10 a.m. this morning, the City of Commerce was also selling bonds a little over $7 million. Their credit rating isn't as good as Universal Cities. They're lower than us, and that's reflected here in the interest rate that they received. Again, same day, same bid opening time, they received an interest rate of 3.38 versus our 3.01%. So again, just an indication of why ratings are important, and the fact that the cities is very strong. Based off of this interest rate of 3.015%, you can see here in the next slide the repayment schedule. This is just a breakdown between principal and interest, and the annual principal and interest payments that will be due moving forward over the next 20 years. Speaking of interest rates, if you go to the next slide, I have a couple of slides for you here. Things have been pretty volatile here since the end of 2021. For a very long time, over a very long period, we were in an interest rate environment where it was extremely low, and now we're starting to see the uptick, and it's starting to move pretty dramatically and pretty quickly. The red line is the yield curve that was in effect at the end of 2021. This is what interest rates throughout the curve were showing. You can see here the green curve, the green one is here most recently. And you can see here how quickly interest rates have risen. This is pretty drastic in our world, in the bond world, these movements of over 132 basis points or 1.32%, which is a pretty big move and quick move. And so again, but overall, if we put in perspective on the next slide, we're still in a relatively low interest rate environment. You can see here, this slide goes to 1980, and the red line there, that's where we're at today in terms of interest rates. And so you can see here going back in 1980, early 80s, it was pretty rough. Cities back then were issuing bonds in the teens, which is pretty high. We have not seen that for a little while. But again, overall, we're very happy with the interest rate that we're able to attain today for the city. If you go to the next page, this is just an update on the May 2010 Streets and Drainage Bond Program that the city allowed the council to issue on their behalf. Again, the total amount that was requested or received back then was $19.5 million. As we discussed, the city issued that in increments over time. And the chart here in the very bottom, you can see when we started issuing bonds. We started issuing bonds in 2010, 2013, 16, 19, and 2022. And then the middle column, you can see the bond amounts that were issued at each of those years. And on the right side there, you can see the interest rates that we locked in during those times. And so you can see today, it's about the third highest there, but the highest one was in 2013 when interest rates also took a leap up at that time. Lowest one was 2016 at a 2.07%. But overall, we're very happy with the bond program, the way it transpired over the last 12 years. The next page is the financing goals that were achieved when we last visited with you, when we asked you for permission to move forward on this financing plan. We're going to generate bond proceeds for continuation of the street projects at $3,145,000. We did that. We utilized a competitive sale method to attain the lowest market rate. When we locked in that interest rate with the bid opening today. The action that you'll be taking today will officially award the bonds to the winning bidder, FHM Capital Markets. And based on your action this evening, Noel and his team will prepare and send the legal transcript over to the Texas Attorney General's office to schedule a closing on May 18th. And no additional meeting is required, no additional action is required. That's just done over an electronic bank wire where you'll receive the funds into your project account. On the last slide here is the term sheet. This is essentially just a summary of what I described to you. And most importantly, it shows the fixed interest rate that we were able to lock in today of 3.015%. Again, that's a fixed interest rate and locked in for the next 20 years, but over after 10 years, you'll have the opportunity to refinance or pay that down if you so choose to at that time. And again, the S&P rating agency affirmed the city's strong credit rating of AA plus, and one of the big reasons why we were able to attain this low interest rate today. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have, or if you have any questions on the ordinance itself. Noel is also here to answer that. In your packet too, what I put in there is the actual rating report provided by Standard & Poor's that bond investors reviewed for your reference. But aside from that, we're very happy with the interest rate. As the city's financial advisors, we recommend that you award the bonds to FHN Capital Markets.
Well, it's very interesting considering the way things have been escalating lately, that rate is available. Fantastic. And I think for all of you in the audience, I think you need to realize that AA plus rating is really, really, really important when we go after these types of bonds. And so I think it's critical that we realize that the reason why we can get these types of rates is because of the fact that our rating is so high. So let me entertain a motion, then we'll ask questions.
Mr. Mayor, I move to approve.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Maxwell, second by Councilmember Shelby. Let's open it up for discussion then. Any questions of Noel or Victor? Start with Paul.
Just very quickly, Victor, since we do have so many new faces out in the audience tonight, the last time you were here, we didn't have as many. Did you let everybody know that last time we spoke about the difference between the, correct me if I'm wrong, difference as far as the city is concerned between the top AAA rating versus the AA plus? It's not out of the realm of possibility that we could get that AAA, but because of the fact that we're landlocked, that AA plus rating is probably as high as we're going to be able to obtain, correct?
Yes, sir. That's exactly right. The AAA rating is very few entities have that, and because we are landlocked and there's no room for additional growth, I anticipate that we would potentially be capped. That's not to say it could never happen if you continue to grow your strong reserves and limit future debt issuances to a certain extent, just not too much. You may get there, but realistically, I think we're essentially at the peak of where these rating agencies, because when you get the rating, you're being compared not only based off of your history and how well you manage your funds, which you've done an extremely good job of doing, but you're also compared to other Texas cities and also other cities throughout the country as well. So the AAAs, like the city of San Antonio and other larger entities where there's additional room for growth, you're still being compared against them.
I appreciate you reiterating that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Goolsby.
Thank you, sir. So it was kind of hit on earlier about maybe we hold off on this. My concern with holding off on this, and maybe you can allay that or you can verify it. You're seeing interest rates continue to climb. Is that what you're?
That's what I've been seeing, but I continue to clarify and let everybody know my crystal ball is very foggy. So I don't know when it's going to stop. I was hoping it'd stop by now, but it hasn't. And so we're just continuing to see with the Federal Reserve increasing interest rates, people are holding off and buying municipal bonds at this point, and that's one of the big reasons why we're seeing an interest rate environment like we're in right now, where it's going up. I just don't know when it's actually going to stop, because we were pretty much at the bottom of the interest rate scale for a very long time. Yeah.
Okay. And when was this originally decided that we would go out to these bonds? How long ago was that?
2010.
2010. Okay. I'm just going to ask a procedural question from staff because I have the same issue with Judson. Why so long?
On the debt?
Yeah.
Because we wanted to carry out it as long as we can to keep our INS rate manageable.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And also, if I could add too, the reason why some folks wait to issue debt, because what's preferred and more prudent is that you issue bonds when you're actually going to use the money. The IRS, because the IRS highly regulates these bonds, doesn't want you to issue bonds because you're trying to time the market. They want you to use it in a reasonable fashion, and what they mean by that was in a 3-year period, they want you to expend most of these bonds.
Okay, we'll follow up and I'll go to Mr. Shelby.
This one's maybe not so much for Victor, but what are we going to do with the money?
So Randy's identified several streets in the aviation district that need to have work on it. However, as you all well know, the cost of construction is changing constantly. So he has his targeted streets. If it comes that the 3.1 does not cover that, then we may go with some alternative streets that have less work that need to be done on them, so that we can wisely use the funds that we're given.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Shelby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you check my math here, we're looking at over a 20-year period, we're gonna pay about $896,000 in interest. Is that about right?
Yes, sir, I could actually tell you the exact one.
Okay, I don't have a total on mine, so I had to do it all manually.
Oh, okay, yeah. Let me see, 1 second, I can pull it up.
That's what I did.
Yeah, so we're looking at 896,000.
Okay, and so, I mean, I know I'm asking you to just kind of guesstimate numbers. I mean, if we were to come in and say, that we waited on this and the interest rate went up, 0.5% or 1%, I mean, that would be a substantial increase.
Yes, so then after that, you're going over $1 million.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Any other comments by anyone?
Yes.
Mr. Neville?
Does this include anything in Patrick Road, which is a state highway?
You're asking if this current issuance is going to be used on Pat Booker Road? The answer is no, only on city streets.
Thank you. Okay, again, I want to make sure everybody realizes that Pat Booker Road is a state highway that is not controlled by Universal City. So any of these bonds that we issue and the streets that we repair are the ones that we can totally control here in Universal City. Okay, any other questions? Okay, we have a motion and a second, so let me call, again, this is our first reading. If something comes up where you think there's an issue, we have a second reading coming up at the next meeting. So let me call for the vote then, please, Chris.
Councilmember Maxwell.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelby.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Neville.
Aye.
Councilmember Goolsby.
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian.
Aye.
Councilmember Volle.
Okay, the motion passes on. Well, thank you very much. And for your information on the audience, he has been amazing how he's been able to help negotiate very, very good, positive rates for us. And I think it's a tribute to the work that he has done for Universal City. We applaud. Thank you very much. So let's proceed. Thank you.
Yes.
Victor,
Okay. Next item is tab number C. It's kind of similar. Approved resolution 935. It's a resolution authorizing the defeasance of a portion of the city's outstanding general obligation bonds, Series 2013, and the defeasance of all of the city's outstanding general obligation refunding bonds, Series 2015, with available funds of the city, approving other matters related thereto. So,
Great, thank you again.
you ready to go again?
Yes, sir, I'm back, yes.
Go for it.
This item, the first item was about issuing new debt for new projects. This one is about using available funds that you have currently to pay off existing debt and start taking those off the books too. So the first page after the cover sheet, this is something I shared with you the last time I was here. This is your existing debt profile. What it shows is the outstanding bond issuances and what we originally did with that particular bond that we issued at that time. The ones that are highlighted in blue, the GEO bond series 2013, that was that first issuance that we did for the street program. In addition to the general obligation refunding bond series 2015, have been identified to defease, and when we say defease, that's just our fancy word in the bond industry to say we're paying off debt early, basically. We're taking legal action to go ahead and release those funds to pay that off ahead of schedule. And so the highlighted issuances are the ones that we identified for defeasance. If you go to the last page of this presentation, it gives you a summary of what we're doing. Again, defeasance just means that we're paying off debt prior to the scheduled due date, benefits and interest cost savings, and also to help you stabilize your INS tax rate. The city first conducted a defeasance in 2020, in February of that year. The staff is recommending to utilize excess collections to reduce debt by pursuing another defeasance resolution that you're considering this evening. If approved, we will finalize the numbers tomorrow morning, and then those funds will be released from the city on April 25th. At that time, it will be sent over to an escrow fund, and at that point, will be officially off of the city's books on April 25th. You can see here this chart, the summary of the impact of those defeasances that we conducted in 2020. The interest cost savings was about $55,310. Based on the current defeasance that you're considering this evening, that would be an amount of about $2.3 million of principal that would be taken off of your books on April 25th. The interest cost savings generated by paying those bonds off early is $236,000 for a total of $291,000 in defeasances or interest cost savings to your taxpayers by conducting these defeasances. I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have on this item.
Okay, let me entertain a motion and then we'll vote for it.
Move for approval.
Councilmember Shelby's motion, second by Councilmember Najarian. Any discussion, anyone? Mr. Shelby?
I have a question, and this may be the staff question, more so than Victor, but do we expect to see any impact on the debt service rate with this payoff?
No, because we're taking debt off the books and adding debt to the books. One of the things that we considered when we were running the numbers on that is to make sure that our INS rate remains steady.
Is that what they're calling now, the INS rate? Excuse me. The debt service INS rate. Okay, so then my question is it offsetting it at all, or are we expecting to see that rate to go up?
We're staying flat.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, good. Mr. Goolsby?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we're looking, the interest rates on the defeased bonds here forward are 5%. We're pulling that out of our rainy day fund to pay for it.
So I have two. One of them is coming from some excess debt service reserve funds that we have. Remember, in the last few years, we've refinanced and we've had some cost savings there. So we do have a little additional fund in the debt service. That will be used to pay it off. And then the other one is when we had our discussion regarding the sale of the parkland. In order for us to sell that, we need to pay off the outstanding debt that is on it, so it could be a clean sale. And so we are taking that from our general fund reserves, and the direction that the council has given to staff is once the parkland is sold, the general fund reserves need to be replenished.
Thank you. I'm assuming that the interest rate that we're paying out is greater than the interest rate we're gaining on our money as it sits in the bank.
Say that again?
We're going to save more than we make if we pay it off.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else? Okay. Specifically, I think this is I think makes a lot of sense, and it's something that if we can pay off some of the debt, it really helps us in the long run. And again, you can see that the potential there is $291,000. That's not small change. So yes.
No.
Yes, Mr. Shelby.
No, I didn't have it.
Okay. Well, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion by anyone on council?
I just think it'd be irresponsible if we didn't.
Mr. Neville, what?
I think it would be irresponsible if we didn't.
Responsible. All right. Okay, let's call for the vote then, please. Chris?
Councilmember Shelby?
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Neville?
Aye.
Councilmember Goolsby?
Aye.
Councilmember Maxwell?
Aye.
Councilmember Volle?
That motion passes. That leads us right into the next item, which is an O tab. We'll be discussing matters related to a potential bond election to be held in November of 2022. So Pam, we turn over to you.
Thank you. So as we have discussed in the past, the 2020 bonds, the 19.5 million, we have essentially issued all of that. And we're going to assume that street repair is needed in the future. So in order to continue with that process, we need to start having the discussions about having a street and drainage improvements ballot language or ballot item for voters to consider. Again, remembering that they approve it, but we don't actually issue the debt until the appropriate time shows up on our INS and whatever the IRS regulations are. So we've gone back in and looked at the streets on the capital improvement program that Randy has for streets and started identifying our next projects once we get past this $3.1 million issuance that we would work on if the voters would approve the $30 million bond package that we're proposing in November. So with that, again, we have Victor and Noel here, and they can go over any particulars.
Okay, we're just in a discussion phase tonight.
This is only a discussion because it's one of those things you have to start discussing it early because people want to have a lot of information about it. And again, it is an educational process that not everybody goes through more than once in their lifetime, sometimes twice. So we thought it would be prudent to start having the discussion now. If council considers going forward, we wouldn't actually start calling for the election until August.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, this is the last time I promise that.
You're still out there, man.
So, again, as you indicated, Mayor, we're not taking any action. We're just starting the conversation so you can let the public know that you're considering potentially calling for a bond election this coming November, which is the next available election cycle. So we prepared some information for your consideration as you're beginning these conversations as to whether you'll do a bond election. The first page after the cover sheet is the bond election history. The city had successful bond measures approved in 2007, May of that year, and then May 2010, as we just discussed and completed. The street program for $19.5 million was also approved by the city's voters. So the way bond elections work is that you first have to ask the voters for their permission to issue up to a certain amount. After they give you their approval, as in the 2010 bond program, it's up to the council as to when and how to issue that bond authorization over time. You don't have to issue it all at once, especially if you won't be using that money all at once. If you go to the next slide, there's a couple of factors to consider as you plan and as we run numbers and to see how much can we afford and how much can we manageably issue while still maintaining our pristine credit rating of AA+ from Standard & Poor's for our GO bonds. And so the first one and the biggest driver for bond programs on the GO side that will be supported by property taxes or your INS tax rate or debt service tax rate are going to be your property values. That's going to be the biggest driver as to how much you can afford as a city. The second factor will be how much debt do we have on the books. And so this is another thing where defeasances, or if you have the opportunity to pay off existing debt that are on the books, pay them off early, it just creates additional capacity for you to be able to issue debt and manage your INS tax rate moving forward into the future. And the third one is the INS tax rate. Where do we want our INS tax rate to be? How much can we afford to adjust that up or down? If you go to the next slide, this is your property value information over the last 10 years. Currently, within the city limits, our property values that we utilize to set our M&O and INS tax rate is $1.62 billion. That's how much value is worth. In the last 10 years, on average, we're growing about 6% per year. I don't know what the value is going to be this coming year, but it seems like, based on everything I'm reading, it's probably going to be a little bit more than 6%. So, I don't know. I don't like to bet, but you'll see. So in all likelihood, we're probably going to be above the $1.62 million. So, Mr. Shelby, you indicate, you asked, what's our tax rate going to be next year? Well, that's going to continue to change each year based on the property value. So, as your property values go up, then your INS tax rate will go down. It's an inverse relationship. So, as you get your certified values come July and you're adopting your tax rate in August, September, then you'll finalize it at that point. But currently, right now, we're at $1.62 billion. Again, with the average growth rate last 10 years, 6%. If you go to the next slide, this is looking at your INS tax rate history or your debt service tax rate. Here, it's relatively stable. When we approved bonds in 2007 and 2010, here going in 2012, our INS tax rate at the time, again, INS tax rate are the taxes that you could only legally use to pay principal and interest on debt that you have outstanding and making payments on and that are on your books. In 2012, our INS tax rate was 12.3 cents. And since that time, it's been relatively stable. It's been, 11 cents, 10 cents. Currently, our INS tax rate is just above 10 cents at 10.1 cents per $100 valuation. So that's where we're anticipating it might be, but it could, again, change as your property values change over time and how much debt you incur in the future as well. If you go to the next slide, this is a summary of the detailed analysis that we conducted. Here we're looking at a $30 million bond program, and again, nothing has been decided. This is just something to start the conversation. We're saying if we have $30 million in street improvement needs, what would that look like? And so here our assumption for this model is that we would conduct a November 2022 bond election, and if the voters approved the issuance of $30 million for their street improvements. We are also assuming that we're not going to be issuing all the debt all at once. We would do similar to 2010, where we'll be issuing the debt as needed. Under this model, just for planning purposes, nothing set in stone, is that we would be issuing $6 million every 2 to 3 years in that time frame as those projects came up and you're able to manage them. The annual property value growth, in my model, as you know, I like to be a little conservative, and so in my models, I'm assuming that over the next 5 years, we're growing 3% per year, not the 6% average that we're growing. I want to do a little bit lower because I want to give you the worst case scenario as you continue to talk to your citizens about a possible bond program. I don't want to overpromise and run a very high growth percentage. So again, instead of 6% average, I'm using 3% annual property value growth for the next 5 years of 3%. And after that, I'm holding it steady at 2% per year. So again, in our opinion, still pretty conservative based off of our historically average growth rate. So what are the results of that? Can we afford a $30 million bond program, assuming these assumptions? And so what that calculates to be is that the INS tax rate increase, assuming my conservative property value growth, and depending on how often you issue this debt, the impact based off where we're at today at 10 cents could be potentially anywhere from 2 to 4 cents in an INS tax rate impact for a $30 million bond program. And so what would that mean to me as a homeowner for a $250,000 taxable value home? You're looking at, let's say if it was 2 cents, what the actual impact would be. We're looking at $50 per year to manage the $30 million bond program, or $4.17 per month to pay for the street improvements. If it was closer to the 4 cent range, which I'm hoping it probably won't be, especially with the projected increase in property values, you're looking at 4 cents impact at $250,000 home. That annual tax increase would be $100 or $8.33 per month to pay for the street program at $30 million. The good news here for the citizens is that you recently approved the over 65 homestead exemption. So the way bonds work, in particular, if you're looking at a tax rate increase, is that folks that have the over 65 homestead exemption in place, by the time you have to increase your rate in the future, they won't be impacted by this increase and this bond program. Their values are frozen, and so they will not feel the burden of an increased tax rate to support the $30 million bond program. Just want to let you know that, because that is a pretty big benefit for those who have the over 65 homestead exemption. The final page, I know I've monopolized the conversation here. I'd like to hand it over to the bond attorneys to discuss just timelines and things for you all to consider, any recent changes in state law with respect to bond elections. And so I'd like to call either Noel or Rose to come up here and visit with you on the timeline regarding the bond elections.
Rose got the nod.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Rose Koneski with McCall, Parkhurst, and Horton. Noel is your bond counsel. He's the one who knows how to navigate all of the ins and outs of the Attorney General's office, SEC regulations, and what have you. That's not my department. I am your election lawyer. So it's my job to help the city navigate the election process. These timeline items are just the major dates. There are a number of other critical deadlines that are important after you decide to call an election. The most important thing is that there is a narrow window of time in which to call an election for this coming November. And that window is the first item on the list, August 10th through the 22nd. We've also outlined the registration date. That's always a big one for people planning on an election. Your early voting period, and of course, your election day in November. As Victor said, this is still a discussion phase. There's nothing cast in stone. You are looking specifically at a street project, but there's even room there in how you decide to write the legal question that you submit to the voters, what I would call the measure. And that's also discretion that's reflected in how you write the ballot language. And if the council decides to move in the direction of calling an election, those are items that we'll discuss with you in the future.
Okay, any specific questions, Rose? Anyone? Okay, again, this is just a discussion. The potential of obviously having a bond in the future is very important. We know we need massive work on our streets. So we'll be deciding, council will be deciding if this is the way we want to go. And it will be up to the voters. It will go to the voters and they will tell us what they feel. And that's exactly what happened in 2010. That decision was made to go ahead and issue, have the citizens tell us what they wanted to have. And they said, yes, we need it. And clearly, there's no question. All of us sitting up here know that that's a necessity. You drive our streets constantly, we need those repairs. So this is a discussion item tonight. We'll take a look at it, and it looks like if you could see the time schedule is by the early part of August, we need to make a decision whether we want to go for a bond election, which will be go before your citizens in November. So that's where we are. Does anybody else have a specific comment? Are we good on discussion? Yes, Kim?
Mayor, I just want to add it in terms of public education on street bonds. So as we do with every bond project that we have in terms of streets, Randy is dusting off, updating, revising his street CIP program to prepare for this in case it does get moved forward. Also, once council calls for the election, obviously we'll have, like we always do in the lobby and on other means, the roads and the projects that we intend to have within that $30 million. And I say intend because, as we know, normally we would only do a $20 million bond project, but now a $5 million project is turned into a $6 million, and we don't know quite what that's going to be like in future years. So while we have a list, we know that some of those parts are interchangeable as we go on, but we'll identify the most critical streets, whether it's overlay or reconstruction or mill and overlay, and we'll have that before the election period starts.
And that's exactly what we did in the 2010 one. Everyone knew which streets were recommended, and council acted upon those, knowing exactly where we needed to go. And there was a little bit of flex, but very, very little. So most of the improvements that were done with that $20 million we had were exactly according to plan that we knew about and the citizens knew about. And that's exactly the way we'll do it if it comes up in November again. Okay, that was good discussion. Thank you very much.
You have a council member.
I'm sorry, William, did you have a comment?
I do have a question.
Yes, please.
For Randy. On a standard residential street, let's say, it's about what, quarter mile long? Almost
Little less.
A little less than a quarter mile. So on average, what is the cost of a mill and overlay of a street like that versus a reconstruction? Just so I can get an idea.
Okay, I'll talk reconstruction because that's what we've been doing a lot of. In the past budgets, on the average residential street, we had a CIP budget of about $200,000. And I could do
What does CIP mean?
capital improvement project, sorry, yes. So that's what we would have in our annual budget as for street repairs, maintenance, stuff like that. I could do for $200,000. Slowly from early 2010, well, I say from 2010 on up to today. This last year, I put in $400,000. At today's cost right now, if you're familiar with Ivy Lane, I got my estimate for Ivy Lane, and it's Ivy and Hillview does a little horseshoe shape. Just half of that horseshoe is $800,000
For reconstruction.
For reconstruction, when originally it was around $400,000, and that's at today's escalation cost right now. So it kind of scares me on a mill and overlay a little bit. I would say it's probably half that. It's probably at my $400,000 right now.
So I think that's what we're looking at. There's a critical need. There's a critical need out there, and the longer we delay it, it's not going to be helpful. So we need to take a look at it as soon as we can. So we're potentially looking at it as an August timeframe to make that decision whether we want to go with it. Because it's just continued to escalate, as Randy mentioned. As the funds go up, we've got to be prepared. So Okay, thank you very much for your time. Anyone else? Yes, sure.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just out of curiosity, how often is this going to come up to council for a question, to be a discussion on between now and August?
If we get a whole new council, we can bring it back again. We'll bring it back to them before the August so they can prepare for it and make a consideration of it. Between now and July, probably not.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, very good. All right, so that's our discussion item. Now we move on to tab number D. Consider resolution 936. It's a resolution of the City of Universal City, Texas, approving the application for grant funds from the Bureau of Reclamation Water Smart Scale Water Efficiency Grants for FY 2022 program funding opportunity, and it's number R22AS00195. So Kim, you want to take this on?
I'm going to take this
Randy,
one.
please.
This is a new grant. We've never gone after a grant with Water Smart before, and basically it's a new funding. Well, it's been funding out there, but it's funding that new for us that we would go after for our meter replacement program. Currently, we just completed our first year of the meter replacement program, and this is basically our AMI automated metering system that we have now that we're going to be trying to start replacing because they're starting to age out right now. When they start getting between 10 and 12 years, we always try to rotate these meters out, starting to replace them. So this is a grant that we've identified that we can apply for. It's a $100,000 grant. We would have to provide a match, no more than $125,000. All this does come out of the utility fund, so there's money in there for us to go after these grants because it's part of our meter replacement program that we do. So this is an opportunity that we can save on the utility side if we were successful in getting this grant. This is going to be a little bit more difficult because we don't have the basic model meters. We do have the automated AMI system. So not sure how they will look at going from AMI to AMI when we start replacing these meters. So that's one of the challenges that we have in our grant writing that will place in there it will be a benefit to us in replacing these meters. So, and the cost of these meters with anything with brass has gone up tremendously. So my cost in buying meters, so this will help offset those costs.
This is the Department of the Interior grant.
Yes. Yes, it's Department of Interior, in which the Bureau of Reclamation will be responsible for administering the grant.
Okay. Let me go ahead and entertain a motion, then we'll go. Kim, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, can you just talk to them about what we're doing with metering purchases now because of the short supply?
So the biggest thing that we've never encountered before, we've had census meters, and we've brought in another AMI system, which is Neptune, which I'm tremendously proud that we did, because our census supplier has come out and said meters are 12 months out. They have no meters. And this is at a point that we started replacing meters. Since then, they were calling me, they said, the Neptune, we're putting in Neptune right now. We don't have an issue right now. Well, everybody in the United States that buys census has now switched to Neptune, Badger, and forget the other one, switched all these meters. Now we went from that call of we got meters to 2 months, now to 4 months, and now it's going further out. So I have expended a PO for the remaining, everything I had in meters, knowing that this PO that I've given them to buy Neptune meters, we will not see, hopefully we'll see in September of this year. So we are gonna have to really stock up to carry us with meter replacement, because not only is it replacing these meters, but we do have growth in our city that I gotta supply meters for. So it's a big challenge for us right now on the utility side.
Okay, let me entertain a motion.
Move for approval.
Who's making the motion?
I made the
Councilmember Shelby, second by Councilmember Maxwell. Let's open some discussion then. Did you, Mr. Najarian?
Yeah, I'll vote.
Just a quick question for Randy. You you had brushed on, you're not sure the difficulty between going from the AMI to the AMI. Does that mean, as the automated meters, is a possibility that what we have now is not going to be compatible with?
No, there's nothing about compatibility, it's just funding for it, right? So you gotta, when you're doing a smart grant like this, you have to show how it's gonna benefit our system. Water savings, just the technology, how much conservation we'll be providing by these meters by notifying the residents when they sign up for our automated system. Because they can get leak alerts if they sign up for all this. So those are the things that we have to emphasize in our grant to do this, so.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Shelby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of questions. So I'm clear, because I don't remember. Are all of our meters on AMI?
Yes,
Okay.
or 100%.
Okay. And then what is the life of a meter?
So you have a 10-year warranty on the meter.
Okay.
And so that's basically, it's just like any warranty, you're on your own after that. So the typical meter is you try to replace between 10 to 15 years. We try to target 12 years is our target date.
And with the shortage, how many meters do you have that you need to replace? What is it, halfway through this year?
We have over 6,000 meters in the system right now. So right now we replaced 2 entire books right now.
Two entire
routes.
Okay.
They're books routes. So we got 2 of those completed. We were starting the 3rd one when I halted it based on our meter shortage right now. So my meter replacement program is on hold just so that I know I have enough in inventory, not knowing until I get my next order before we can start the meter replacement again.
And with the construction, the new housing developments we have in place, we already have an idea of how many new connections we're going to need to put in. Is that
correct? And I have meters for all of those right now in stock.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Neville.
Do you have, does the meter tell you when it's going out?
No, it doesn't. It's not that smart.
It's intelligent but not smart.
Yeah.
Yes, Ms. Nair.
Part of the reason I wanted Randy to have that discussion is because, one, we know there's a shortage of meters, which means the price is going up. As you know, we have an ordinance that sets the price of meters, the fee that we charge for new meters when we install them at single family, new single family. I'm not talking replacement now, I'm talking about a brand new connection. And so with the escalating price, very soon we'll be bringing forward that ordinance to you to have those costs updated as well.
And that'll affect all the new development coming in.
Not the replacement, the new development.
Okay. Anyone else? All right, we do have a motion and we have a second, so if there's no other discussion, we call for the vote then, please, Chris.
Councilmember Shelby?
Aye.
Councilmember Maxwell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Neville?
Aye.
Councilmember Goolsby?
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian?
Aye.
Councilmember Volle?
Aye.
Supply and demand has been amazing. We've all been living with it for the last couple of years. And so it's really a challenge for staff to be able to anticipate what's going to happen in the future. We flat out don't know, but we have to give it our best shot. So before we get into our tab E and F, let's take it's been a little over an hour. Let's take a 5-minute break. We'll be right back. Okay. Ready to go? Let's go ahead and reconvene everyone. Thank you very much for the short break. Sometimes the restroom break is very important to have. So let's go ahead and reconvene everyone. Thank you. Please. Okay. So let's move on to the next item on our agenda this evening, which is tab number E, which is to consider the financial report for quarter number 2 of fiscal year 2022. Ms. Turner?
Thank you, Mayor. It's only been 3 months since you've seen Jessica, but she's back. And the good news is she'll be back for the next 2 quarters as well. Also, reminding you that soon after May, early June, first part of July, we'll start working on the budget, so you'll be seeing and hearing from her more than you ever imagined. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jessica, and she'll give you your second quarter financial report.
Ma'am, Jessica, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. All right, so for Q2, the revenues for the golf course were at $497,000 with expenses of $590,000. That left expenditures over revenue of around $92,000. For the general fund, we had revenue of $9.2 million with expenditures of $3.8 million. That left revenue over expenditures of $5.4 million. Our debt service was $557,000 in revenue with $292,000 in expenditures, leaving $265,000 revenue over expenditures. For capital projects, we had $136,000 in revenue with $150,000 in expenditures, leaving $14,000 expenditures over revenue. Utility fund, $2.3 million in revenue, $2.8 million in expenditures. That left expenditures over revenue of $517,000. For the stormwater, we had $399,000 in revenue with $417,000 in expenditures, leaving expenditures over revenue of about $18,000. Year-to-date actuals, you can see we were at $20.1 million for the city revenue with $14 million in expenditures. So we are $6.4 million revenue over expenditures. Is there any questions on Q2?
Any specific questions? This is the second quarter report. All right, we do need a motion on this report. Move to approve. Motion by Councilmember Maxwell, second by Councilmember Volle. Any further discussion by anyone? All right, let's call for the vote, please, President.
Councilmember Maxwell.
Aye.
Councilmember Volle.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Neville. Councilmember Goolsby.
Aye.
Councilmember Najarian.
Aye.
Councilmember Shelby.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much for your report. So we move on now to our next item, which is tab number F, discussion and proposed fire code update. If you recall, in the last meeting, we decided to continue the discussion on, and meeting with various council members, decided to have a split where we would be discussing the proposed fire codes in this meeting, and in another meeting we'll be discussing the building codes. And these are discussions. The vote will not take place until after all these discussions are completed. And that was kind of the consensus I think I got from our council at our last meeting. So that's how we're proceeding. So this evening we'll go on now and discuss our proposed fire codes and get the updates. So Ms. Turner.
Thank you, Mayor. First, I want to thank our members of our fire department for being here again. They didn't get a chance to speak at all last time, but they'll have plenty of chance to do so this evening. I also want to thank them for the extra time that they did. I went back and asked them to put in where they could the reasons for the amendment so that people could understand what they're thinking and what their process was and why they felt that this particular safety measure was a necessity. So with that, you have everything before you. We're here prepared to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay.
Mayor, Council, thank you. Yes, so as Ms. Turner just explained, as you realized last meeting, this is a cumbersome topic, lots to cover. There's a lot of ins and outs to the decisions that are made. Over the last 6 years, we've been trying to build these amendments and code adoptions, and of course with COVID, it's been a struggle to try to make that happen. And along the way, we've made a lot of changes, a lot of working with developers and business owners and citizens in the city to try to make the best product that we could that works out for everybody. And it's, of course, when you're dealing with money and enforcement of codes, that's not always a fun topic. And so we try to have all things in mind. And a lot of collaboration has happened with our fire marshal being a director of the Texas Fire Marshal Association and collaborating with the North Texas Fire Marshals Association, and here locally our Alamo Area Fire Chiefs Association, and just talking to our neighbors and talking to the businesses and working with them has led to a lot of what you have here presented for you. And not to mention the first responders that are out there in the middle of the night dealing with these issues that has brought us to this final product that we're recommending here for you. And I thank you for taking the time, and Councilman Goolsby for taking the time to meet with us and
and to express your concerns on behalf of your constituents, and we truly value that. And the citizens that provide input, Mr. Volle, we appreciate it as well. I mean, this is a collaborative effort all around, and we understand that we're not the only ones here making the decisions. We're just trying to take all the information in and present you with our best recommendations.
Okay. Again, this is discussion only, so we have any specific questions for Chief Caceres? Yes, Mr. Goolsby.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First off, yeah, I do appreciate the time that y'all spent with, going through this with me, and it was a good afternoon of going through the harassment, and I enjoyed it. And as I'm reading through this, I'm very impressed with how you came back through and your reasonings and the explanations.
He deserves that credit. He spent a lot of hours on this.
Well, I knew it was him and not you. Just kidding.
That would be fire marshal permit, rather than for the record.
So one of the things that came up in our meeting, and I was hoping I could get you to kind of expand on that, was the whole issue of if you see an unsafe situation during whatever reason, and at that point is where you're going to tell them to shut off their gas or shut off their electricity or shut off their water or something along these lines. Is it? Do you warn the owner?
So I think it's kind of taken out of context when you think about it. So we're not going and enforcing from the get-go. Our tactic is to educate, and then if need be, enforce. Now, I know there was a concern about gutters at a house. Well, we don't go and inspect residential properties. We're talking commercial. So not to say that one wouldn't happen, not with the gutters, but with regards to electrical and gas shut-off, if we have a house fire, that scene is now ours. We cannot turn that over to residents with electrical hazards in place, but we also don't just make knee-jerk reactions. We contact the building official to meet us on scene at all hours of the night. We contact representatives from CPS, Centerpoint, whoever the jurisdiction is, and we make that decision collaboratively. We don't want to be just arbitrarily making decisions that, especially if it's a borderline type situation, we'd rather have CPS come out and deem it safe, and then we say, okay, sometimes we just have to isolate a breaker, and then let them just say, okay, don't use that part of the house, we're going to isolate this breaker to your laundry room, and it's now safe for you to go back in and stay there. There's just so many different situations that we encounter that it's hard to just put a blanket on it, but that's kind of what we deal with. There's a difference between residential and commercial, to answer your question.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be back.
Yes, Mr. Shelby.
I'll just ask a question right now, since there seems to be concern with people just arbitrarily turning the power off or turning off services. Have we ever had an issue where we just go and shut somebody's power off or gas off to their building or residence without some type of communication first?
Without communication first, no. We've had to do it on a commercial structure here recently for non-compliance with issues that his tenants were dealing with. And so we try to get a hold of them, try to make a game plan. We get to the point where we end up getting Centerpoint out there to try to come up with a good decision. And it just boils down to sometimes you just have to shut the power off because we can't just allow gas to escape through a building through hidden walls and crawl spaces. And I mean, we're not going to obviously tear apart the walls and try to find the issue, so sometimes it takes shutting off the gas at that time and then putting it back on the building owner to hire somebody to troubleshoot that problem so that the people that are shopping there, eating there, what have you, are safe. It's fair to say that's our job to at least intervene at that point and do that.
But
as far as residences go, house fires is pretty much the only time you're going to see us make that decision to shut off utilities. And actually, we do that from the get-go anyway.
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of whether or not it's safe to turn it back on. And like I said, we have CPS and Centerpoint out there and building official to help us make those decisions. And
But this isn't just to protect the building, the remaining, let's say, the building itself, it's ancillary buildings around that building. I mean, we get a gas leak and we have an explosion, we have a potential of multiple buildings or residences around that building being damaged. So this is the betterment of multiple citizens and or business owners.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. So I know that it was brought up earlier, and I want to kind of, the idea of if I have two buildings side by side and I have a corridor that's enclosed, that's covered, that connects them, that is considered a single fire area. And what every city I've ever worked with has explained is that if I catch a fire here and it can crawl under the roof to another structure, that's why we consider those two contiguous, one contiguous property. Is that correct?
Yes, and again, there's more to that, just depending on the type of building you're talking about. Sometimes those corridors become storage areas, become areas for them to put plants. It might not be a means of egress corridor, but it becomes a housekeeping issue that does end up becoming a hazard, potential hazard.
I have been mad at every fire marshal in the state of Texas over this, but I do understand, and because it is because when you've seen the evidence of a fire going like that, I do have to agree with it, even if I'm not happy about it, because it irritates me in design. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anything else specific? Yes, Ms. Volle.
The concern I have is open burning within the city limits. It's in thing to have a little bonfire in your backyard.
Yes, and those are approved.
Okay.
If you have it approved, you can't just put a 55-gallon drum and light it on fire. But yes, we allow that. I mean, we make excessive. We have a lot of people that call us and just wonder, is this approved? And yeah, if you bought it and it's meant for that, that's an approved fire pit for ambiance purposes, not for burning leaves or brush.
You want to talk about the UIL rating, so everybody when they buy one, they know what to look for?
Yeah, most of those approved. Now, of course, if you're buying it from a store, you're going to have a UL rating on there that's going to tell you, yeah, this is approved for that. But there's also a lot of situations where you have handmade stuff that's that you buy that's probably better quality than that, but it's not going to have a UL rating.
Right.
But that's when you can call us and we'd be glad to just come over and say, yeah, that meets the intent of the code. So we're there to work with people.
That was my concern. I think what threw me was outdoor fireplaces, because this really isn't.
Yeah, and again, it's like you don't see the calls that we go on that lead us up to this decision. It's people that will put a 55-gallon drum, they trim their trees, and then they're just throwing the pieces in there and letting them burn a little at a time so they don't have to haul them off. And what happens is you have 3, 4, 5 neighbors calling because it's a nuisance. And then so we end up having to go over there and say, that's not an approved fire pit. You're not sitting around in Adirondack chairs and enjoying the night. I mean, it's different. And so that's the only reason that we have to address it this way. So.
Good, okay. That's my concern.
Mr. Adjournment.
Yeah, and one of the concerns that were put out here, and just for my clarification, and specifically persons authorized to remove occupants or shut off things, basically a member of the fire department saying it should be completed by persons with the state training and is certified in fire inspections. Do we have that already in place specifically?
So every shift, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Every shift has fire inspectors that are state certified from basic to master. I would say almost 50% of our whole department is at that level already. The people that are going to be making this decision anyway are going to be the incident commander of that particular emergency. And if that person gets to a point where it's just unclear, again, the phone calls are going to start. They're going to call the fire marshal that's 2 minutes away. They're going to call the building official. They're going to call CPS, they're gonna call me, we're gonna make that decision together. But this is mainly for after hours, if him and I are just out of pocket, and that they have to continue working throughout the night. Sometimes they get to, we'll just say, a bar at 1 in the morning, and it's just flooded with people. Somebody has to make that decision to say, hey, we gotta clear this place out. And that's what this is meant for. It's not meant for us to be sending people to all the bars in the middle of the night and checking on them. It's so that when we get an EMS call in the middle of the night and we get there and we have 100 people in a building that should be rated at 50, somebody has to be able to have that authority to say, hey, we gotta start clearing this place out.
And that makes total sense, but bottom line, the person making that decision would always be somebody that's certified to do that. Thank you.
Anybody else? Yeah, I would just like to add that, could you just summarize then for us and the group in the audience, the key elements, again, of the for the proposed fire code updates? Just a quick little summary. I mean, you've done a lot of work on this, and you give great explanation, the reasons why the changes, why the recommended changes. Can you give us some, just a very short summary of the key elements? I know, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I know there's a lot.
It's a lot.
But I think the audience is really concerned, not concerned, but wants to know about why are we doing this? Why are we doing what we're doing?
Yeah, so there's a lot of points in here. Obviously, I can't sit here and go through line by line, but I just want you to know that, yeah, every decision that's made on each one of these points here is, well, going back even further, the International Fire Code, I hate to put it this way, but it's written in blood. There's a lot of things that have happened to lead us up to these big books that you see here. It also gives us the ability to make amendments to fit our jurisdiction. So some of these amendments, although they may seem a little stringent at times, I also want you to realize that staffing is not the same as it is for a city like San Antonio that's using that same code of amendments. So we have to adapt this code to fit our staffing, because we're never going to have the amount of staffing, and I'm not asking for us to spend the money to get to that, because the reality is we never will. So we have to do our due diligence so it doesn't cost taxpayers more to bring on an ungodly amount of staffing for a fire that may occur every month or so. So we make these amendments with that in mind, to make sure that we're adapting to our staffing levels to what you see here before you in these codes. And I know that it can be controversial when you're talking about money when it comes to improving buildings and building developments with stringent standards, and I get that, but I also can sleep at night knowing that your families and those that live here and those that are traveling through here and families of our firefighters, that they're going to get their family member home at the end of their shift. And I can sleep at night knowing that I made those recommendations with all of that in mind. And so,
Chief, thank you very much. I know you guys have put in an incredible amount of time and work on this, and it's all for the betterment of our city, and we really appreciate the effort that you've had. So thanks for the candid discussion this evening. And again, this is just for discussion. We will consider this as specific after we review the building codes at another council meeting. So thank you. I hope that this has been informative to all of you. We, along with council, have had the chance to take a look at it and individually discuss this with staff. And so thanks for your input this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, that concludes our business for this evening. So let's move on now to our city manager comments. Ms. Turner?
Well, since the fire is here, I'll just remind you that not only is May 7th Election Day, but it's also the pancake breakfast. This is a very big fundraiser for the fire department, and the proceeds that they use go to some very good services in assisting residents and other people when they do have a catastrophe within their home or business. So I would ask everyone to come out and support that. It is going to be at the fire station right next door.
Okay, very good. Anything else, Ken?
That's it.
Okay, let's start to my right, Mr. Shelby.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let's see. Red Horse Park. wow. I was able to attend the grand opening, and I actually took one of my daughters up there on Saturday, and that's just fantastic. Randy, thank you to your team, everybody who put in all the work to make that happen. That's what I want to see. I know I've heard from time to time people asking for more parks, and where I'm coming from, I want to see all of our existing parks brought up to standards so that we take care of what we have before we start building something new. And thank you very much for that. I wasn't at the Easter egg hunt, but I saw the pictures. Thank you to all the staff as well for making that happen, and all the volunteers.
There she is right there.
All the staff, sorry. Thank you to Regina.
There's Kristen.
Hey, Kristen. Hi, Kristen. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, Paul?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too was at the Red Horse Ribbon Cutting, and it was very nice. That park is just beautiful. And I was also able to get trampled by several hundred kids during the Easter egg hunt. Not sure how they confused the word "get ready" versus the word "go," but that was I would have got out of the way. But anyway, that was again very very well attended. Everybody had a great time. The city showed well on that, and just kudos to everybody in the staff for making that happen, and just heard nothing but great feedback from that. So I was not here at the last council meeting. Had a family emergency. I was actually dressed in a couple hours before you come. Stepmother had to have an emergency operation, and I thank everybody for all their prayers and concerns. She's doing very well, and I just want to thank you all for that. And I just appreciate, I do know the power of prayer, so thank you very much. That's all I have to say.
Mr. Maxwell. Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Casada. Outstanding job for taking the initiative to appoint a volunteer position. It was within the parameters of the charter, and it was duly noted and voted on. And you and your team do a great job, and I do appreciate it. Even though one or two or three people do not necessarily think so, because it does not necessarily agree with what their beliefs are. Second, Mr. Vincent, thank you very much for your comments. Duly noted that, yes, we want to hear what you have to say. I take offense, though, that you did not mention my name, however you call Ms. Volle out. Now, I'm not going to talk about who responds and who doesn't, but I'm going to give you a few numbers. There was approximately 29 people here tonight. Of that 29 people, we had 4 that spoke. I got 3 emails concerning code. We have 20,000 residents in University City. Of that 20,000 residents, we have approximately 9,000 to 10,000 of those are actually registered voters. So that means every person here tonight represents approximately 700 people out there. So we listen to a lot of folks, and over the last 12 years, our number one concern on this council is to make sure of the morale, welfare, safety, and even the recreation of our citizens. And we've kind of done that. We have fit trails all over the city. Where did we come from? Because citizens said they wanted it. We have parks, and we have park renovations. Why? Because they want it. We have fire professionals. I'm not a fire professional, even though I used to be a volunteer fireman, but we have fire professionals. We have police professionals. We have accounting professionals. We have professionals up on this dais that are voted by these 20,000 people that live here. We have increased our local businesses. Our retail sales tax has steadily increased every single year that I've been in office. And by the way, this is my 12th year in office. We have literally hundreds, if not thousands, of volunteers. And by the way, I see 4 new people that are running for office, and I haven't seen volunteer in the last 12 years. Not saying you have to. Yes, we do listen to folks. You served on a couple of the survey committees, and you saw what we can do. And I'm sure that whenever you were in combat, you had a really strong sergeant major there to tell you what was being said. Well, that's kind of what we do. In the Air Force.
Mr. Mayor.
Sit down. You're not allowed to talk.
I don't want to be lectured to.
He does it all the time. Does it all the time.
Ma'am, please.
Well, I understand why you're in 06, and I'll just quit right there. Thank you.
Let's keep the demeanor the way it needs to be.
I apologize for that last comment. It wasn't meant for that. It was not meant to be that. I want to let you know that this council does a whole lot and listens to the people, and we have across the board. It may not be what you want to hear, but bear in mind, you represent 700 other people out there. And we listen to a lot of people and what is the best for the city. And I do apologize. I did not mean to be disrespectful. I'm just stating the facts. Thank you. Mr. Neville.
Thank you, Mr. Excuse me, about the proposed bond issue. I just want to let you know that, there are two things we as a council can do. Number one, we can say we won't have a vote. We don't need the bond. But the best thing we can do is to say, let's see what the citizens want. And that's why I hope you pass the ordinance that will allow you to tell us if you want to spend the money or not. I pay taxes just like you. I pay taxes to everybody, I think in the United States, because of the way they give money away from the school, to the fire, the hospital, the county, it dwindles away. But it's up to you to decide, do you want great infrastructure? Those bonds that we passed in 2010 did awesome work for our infrastructure. You could never have done anything better. You can't do anything about Pepperville. Well, the state allowed us to beautify it somewhat, by putting trees. But we take that, we have to maintain it. The state doesn't maintain it. And it's one of 3 access routes really to Universal City. 78, Pepperville Road, and Kitty Walk. And my God, Kitty Walk is, to me, that sometimes it's worse as I-35. But we are going to do what you want us to do. If you want good infrastructure, then you've got to decide that you want to vote for it. But it's up to you. We're only 6 up here, plus 7. Mayor doesn't vote unless we have a different opinion, 3-3. But he votes, and I vote, and all of you vote for or against a bond. So we need to know what you want. Please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Air show this weekend. Okay. So, thank you.
Yes, sir. First off, well said, Mr. Maxwell. Thank you. The lecture you gave me, Mr. Vinci, bordered on sexism when you didn't call anyone else by name. I just want to point that out to you. I also want you guys to know that I am council member number 3, not councilman 3. Red Horse, awesome. Did grants help out a little bit? A lot? Okay, great. Thanks for going for them. And that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just got a couple of items. I don't know how many of you are aware that the San Antonio Express News came out with its list of the best in the San Antonio area. We have three winners in our area. Here we had Four Kings. We had Greener Groomers, and we had had Michelle Williams Photography, local Universal City people. They were recognized for their excellence, and I'm not sure we've given them proper recognition, so I'm going to do it tonight. We're very, very proud of those establishments and those people that work in our community and being recognized as the best in the San Antonio area. We're really thrilled with that. Again, the air show is this weekend. If you want to get a preview of it, weather permitting, of course, Friday, the T-Birds will be doing their special demonstration. If you're out in the Northview Park area or somewhere around 1604, you'll probably get a chance to see the T-Birds without having to go on base. Hopefully the weather will permit that to happen. But the air show again is Saturday and Sunday. Going to probably be and I can honestly tell you, having received briefings from the team that's working on it, this is going to be the most spectacular air show that the United States Air Force has ever putting on, recognizing its 75th birthday. Pretty darn awesome. Property taxes. Let me just give you a little preview there. I would say, and I can't obviously substantiate this, but the vast majority of us found our rates skyrocketed. Protest it if you believe you're properly looked at. Protest it. I've seen rates go up from $10,000 to $100,000 in 1 year. That's pretty interesting. Okay, and I will also tell you this, that the tax freeze that was approved last year, that will be effective in 2021. That was a mistake by the appraisal district, and I think we've made that very clear on our website that you will not be affected this year. 2021 is the year, not 2022 or 2023. So I just want to make sure you're totally aware of that. And also, one other last thing is that there's going to be some major changes in the military this summer. The commander of the Joint Base San Antonio in the 502nd Air Base Wing, she is PCSing, going permanent change of station to the Pentagon. She's received her second star, and her replacement is Colonel Driggers, coming, the change of command is May 3rd. The 12th Flank Training Wing will be changing command in August. And Colonel Rowe is going to the Pentagon, and his replacement actually is coming from Kadena Air Base in Okinawa. The one that replaced Colonel Rowe when he came from Kadena is now replacing Colonel Rowe as he leaves the 12th Flank Training Wing, which is pretty exceptional. And then Lieutenant General Robinson is taking over Educating and Training Command. The change of command date has not been named yet, but that's going to happen, but it'll be sometime this summer. The good news is General Webb is not leaving us. He's actually moving to Seguin and relocating, so he's going to stay one of our citizens in our community. So we're very pleased with that. So that's typical military. Those of you in the military understand that this is moving time, and unfortunately we're losing 3 wonderful stars, and we also lost 2 fantastic Air Force. I would call them icons in the last couple of years. One was 4-star Jeannie Habiger, who was the Vice Commander of Air Education and Training Command, and also took SAWS for a number of years. Great, wonderful man. I had the privilege of working for him for a short period of time. And another general, Major General Steve Swenson, terrific guy. And if you ever looked at his background and his military experience, you'd understand why. We've got 2 heroes that we've lost. So, and that's just what happens with attrition, unfortunately, in people. But we've had the honor of being able to be associated with them for a number of years, and UC is proud to have that experience with them all. So thank you all for attending this evening. I hope this was a meaningful meeting for you. Yes, Ms. Turner?
I just wanted to remind everybody that this weekend and next weekend is our spring cleanup, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I recognize that the air show, Pat Booker Road and 1604 and possibly Kitty Hawk might be a little bit jammed. So recommend coming down Universal City Boulevard, which also gets you from Sunrise Canyon there, or Athenian. There's lots of other means to take city streets and to drive by some people's houses and wave as you go.
There'll be a lot of the main entrance is the east gate for parking, west gate for some, and then if you have your military ID, obviously you can get in the main gate. But it will be, again, the show is going to be so spectacular that we're going to have a whole lot of people in our neighborhood this weekend. So let's be prepared. Thank you very much for coming this evening. This meeting is now adjourned.